I kind of want people to not be too prepared. I want them to know it's going to be intense and they should only come if they want to see something different at the theater. But one of the most exciting things about the movie is how mysterious it is. And the experience of watching it is kind of a mystery as it slowly unfolds.
Are you happy?
I love you.
So as the dust is finally starting to settle, we see the results of Darren Aronofsky's psychological thriller not quite settling well with the audience as well as the critics. Nearing its third week, Mother is projected to earn around its original budget of $30 million, a goal which will be deemed as failure in the eyes of the studio executives of Paramount Pictures. For those of you who are not aware, Mother is Darren Aronofsky's latest psychological horror experimental film, which according to its marketing, was intentionally wrapped around its mysterious premise. The film was marketed as a big-budget art house film, promising it to be an experience you will never forget. And what makes Mother such an audacious marketing ploy is that Paramount Pictures, the studio behind its production, decided to have a wide release for the film, a move which is traditionally placed only with blockbusters that you know you'll end up making at least double its budget in return. Opening at 2,368 locations, the faith in the film by a major studio is surely unheard of at this day and age, where big-budget superhero films and franchise-building movies reign supreme for such a vast amount of marketing budget. An odd but bold move nonetheless by Paramount. But it is extremely unfortunate that even with its massive marketing campaign to hype up as the mysterious horror film of the year, Mother only ended up earning $7.5 million on its opening weekend, a number which most certainly drops in its coming weeks. So, the purpose of this video is to ask the question, what lessons are to be learned from this ordeal? Although Aronofsky is a prolific filmmaker in his own right, hardly anyone can disagree that he is no household name like Spielberg or even J.J. Abrams. So here is my view into the curious case of Mother and its failure to captivate the mainstream audience.
When you were growing up, was there kind of a point in time where you knew you had to make films?
Not really. I can't say I knew what I wanted to do probably till I started actually studying film in college.
Prior to this film, Aronofsky has been extremely popular in the art of cinema as audacious, with a bit of surreal imagery of the modern American way of life. His previous films like Pi and Requiem for a Dream were met with critical praise and admiration. But even though his films have somehow always created a buzz around the cinema scene, Aronofsky hasn't exactly struck a chord with the mainstream audiences. Whether you like or hate Aronofsky's films, you cannot help but admire him for trying to at least present something new and audacious to the world of cinema. Films like The Fountain, or even his most grounded work to date, The Wrestler in my opinion, have a certain place to inhabit in the 21st century of American cinema. This all changed in 2010 when Aronofsky released his widely successful film, critically and commercially, The Black Swan. The film's blend of dark, surreal imagery mixed with psychological mind games got the eye of the Academy Awards, and with that, cemented Aronofsky's place with the elite of Hollywood. In many ways, one can acknowledge Darren Aronofsky's commitment to the world of cinema. His particular brand of style visually and thematically separates him from the rest, and thus, creating a distinctive identity for himself. And after the success of The Black Swan, Aronofsky decided to go for a more traditional form of narrative, a dark, gritty portrayal of story of Noah from the Old Testament. And well, it has been quite disappointing to say the least, but now comes Mother. So with this strange premise and imagery, Paramount Pictures had the monumental task of marketing this film somehow to an audience who are not used to taking risks when it comes to visual entertainment. And since you have a major star like Jennifer Lawrence, who reportedly took $15 million alone for this film, the studio knew they had to have a surefire hit with this film. Otherwise, the fall of this investment would further prove that taking risk in Hollywood does not pay off. This gave the studio several reasons to make Mother a wide release, pumped in around $30 million for its production marketing the film no less. But unfortunately, the gamble did not pay off. Why? Apart from the lack of interest from the mainstream audience, the studio itself is surely at fault here. And here are the lessons we can learn from the failure of Mother. Since the past decade, Hollywood is currently under the horror movie revival phase, and there have been admittedly several surprise hits like Get Out and It Follows, films that captured the attention of its wide audience either by its audacious, terrifying trailer or the word of mouth. Critics and audience who went to early screenings, their praises for the film quickly got around, who recommended it to their friends, and not before long, the film was earning millions at the box office. Mother could have essentially fallen under that category, a film so insane that you certainly just had to watch it to believe it. But unfortunately, Mother falls short from being just that. And yes, there are some outrageous scenes, but the overall vibe of the film is too dark for the mainstream audience to get themselves involved into, especially for people who aren't used to shocking imagery in their movies. A similar example could be taken from the 1999 cult classic, The Blair Witch Project, a film that clearly looks like a low-budget indie film, but the mystery surrounding its legitimacy is what made it such a huge success. Is it a real found footage of an unfortunate group of teenagers, or is it scripted? The mystery surrounding the film worked extremely well for its marketing campaign, and the word of mouth quickly became its best marketing tool. Mother, unfortunately, is a film for an acquired taste, something that many mainstream audiences would not even be open to experiment with it and downright reject it.
God help you.
Judging from its trailer and stills, it's fairly obvious that Mother was marketed as a horror film, competing with the likes of It. I guess for some reason, Mother could be interpreted as one, but in the traditional sense, it surely isn't a horror film. The film's premise is a retelling of certain key narratives from the Bible, mixed with at times nightmarish imagery. But tricking the audience into believing it to be a jump scare horror genre like It is perhaps one of the worst things a major film studio could do to its audience. Tricking people into expecting something else by fooling them through its trailer is always a bad idea. You perhaps might be able to fool the audience in its opening weekend, but the next coming weeks could prove disastrous for the studio. I believe that a lot of faith in its marketing budget had to do with Jennifer Lawrence as the main star. Apart from someone who works or is keenly interested in the art of filmmaking, a large portion of audience members are not aware of who is involved in behind the scenes of making a film. So I guess it's a fair assessment that many are not even aware who Darren Aronofsky is. This is why the ploy of marketing the film needed to be centered around the lead star, someone who is already known in certain other franchises like the Hunger Games or the X-Men films, and are willing to take on an audacious lead role in a nightmarish-fueled film. But unfortunately, this clearly was not enough. The biggest blunder for an Aronofsky wide release is, well, obviously Aronofsky himself. Whether you love or hate his films, it is most certainly clear that you need an acquired taste to watch his work. Most viewers would probably find his visuals unsettling and unpleasant, which is probably what Aronofsky craves for. Perhaps, during the American New Wave, a wide release of Mother could have easily been the perfect atmosphere for the film, and with films like Midnight Cowboy and Easy Riders captivating the mainstream audiences, the audacity of Mother could have fit right in. It is sad that the film scenario of today is extremely conservative and repetitive. Only a film with a surefire hit and a previous legacy behind it, be that a book, graphic novel, or even a TV series, make profits in return. And no other major studio would be interested in a gamble like Mother. In that sense, I do admire Paramount Pictures' courage to go for a wide release, but it ultimately becomes a victim of its own deranged expectations. Perhaps testing the water with slightly more tenacious film could have been a better move. In the end, not only is this a blow for Paramount Pictures, but American filmmaking in Hollywood itself. Many audience members who end up despising the film would further be turned off and go for a much safer route the next time with their movie entertainment. A depressing scenario to say the least.
Well, the most important thing to know about this film before seeing it is to know that it's all allegory. It's all metaphors that are tied into this narrative.
Film is essentially a medium of empathy. It can make you laugh, cry, despair, because you can place yourself in the film's narrative. You can actively imagine yourself in the character's shoes and empathize the pain that they're going through. A film like Mother lacks exactly just that, because after the first half of the film, it's fairly obvious that the narrative is heading towards a surrealistic nightmare, with characters only serving as allegories and nothing more. While rich with symbolism and allegory, fails to captivate an audience with its obscure premise, mainly because it works too heavy with symbolism, and beyond that, there's nothing that would make you care about its characters. Films like Requiem for a Dream or Wrestler had relatable, empathetic characters, a bad place in our lives that we've all been to. And whether you love or hate Mother's symbolism, it's a baffling art house film to be released to a wide audience and was surely destined to fail. In many interviews, Aronofsky has admitted it to be a retelling of many essential parts of the Bible, and perhaps also an allegory of the destruction of our planet Earth. Is that enough for a mainstream viewer to be invested in the film and recommend it to his or her friends? I highly doubt it. But in the film's defense, it is technically a sound film, and performances for the most part are quite good. The film is far from being a repeated viewing, Kubrick-esque work, as Aronofsky blatantly admits what he wanted to say during most of his interviews. A move that I personally feel defeats the purpose of actual cinephiles checking the film out and interpreting it for themselves.
And I kind of wanted to tell the story of Mother Earth and God living in a home together, and then all the people arrive. You know, when we made Mother, we definitely put a lot of passion to it, a lot of different ideas, a lot of feelings. We wanted to make a roller coaster ride that people could ride over and over and over again and get a big thrill every time they see it.
During the Toronto Film Festival press screening of the film, Aronofsky actually handed out a poem to the viewers, which somehow pitched the intention of the film before being screened. This just seems somewhat forced and a contrived move, which resembles a snarky film student more than an established filmmaker. Perhaps you should have taken a page from Lynch's philosophy and let the audience construct the allegories for themselves. There's nothing worse than a filmmaker over-explaining his film to the audience because they just didn't quote-unquote get it. In conclusion, Mother ends up pleasing neither the mainstream audiences for its absurd imagery nor the art house crowd for its blatantly obvious symbolism. And with that philosophy, there certainly is no safety net spread underneath its fall, and Mother falls deep into the abyss of darkness which would be hard to recover from. Perhaps in the near future, it could gather a cult following like Blade Runner or Fight Club, but for now, it's a decision that's most likely going to further distance film studios from taking chances with films with original content.
The only thing you can be sure of is what you like. And the reality is what you like ends up being what a lot of people like, because we're all going through a very similar journey. And that's the magic of film. I mean, you know, one of my favorite films is Totoro, which is this Japanese animated film about a 7-year-old Japanese girl, and the fact that I can go on a journey with this girl and emotionally feel her entire ride is the magic of filmmaking. And so if you understand how a person works within a story, then that's the story you need to tell.